Welcome once again. I'm Charlie Greenberg, your host and moderator for webMethods Wednesdays, Software AG's ongoing presentations of cutting-edge use cases and live demos supported through webMethods technology. We've lately provided sessions on Big Data Gateway, microservices, and DevOps, among other solutions, all of which play a solution-oriented role in the digital business platform, which enables the rapid development of next-generation digital applications. And while integration creates the backbone of the digital business platform, it's also very much about the value of enterprise API portals, including their monetization, which tie these solutions together. And in just a moment, we'll be joined by David Overos, our Director of Product Marketing, and Kevin Miller, Principal Systems Engineer. Of course, as usual, we'll be conducting a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So please use the WebEx Q&A box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen for any questions or comments. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce David Overos.
Okay, thanks a lot, Charlie. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I hate to do these webinars and start talking only to myself. So, hey, everybody, thanks for joining. I'm really excited today to talk to you about API management. Kevin and I have some pretty cool things to show you in our demo, and we'll jump right to that in a minute. But before we jump into the demo, I always like to give a little bit of context about what we're going to talk about and a little bit of information about who Software AG is, if you're not familiar with us. Software AG has actually been around for quite a while. We've been around for 45 years, and we are used by many companies all over the world. In fact, more than 70% of the Global 1,000 companies use Software AG in some capacity. We have millions of developers building applications on our platforms, and we have millions of users who access our products for the purposes of doing their business and their everyday functions in their jobs. So we have a lot of people that are engaged with Software AG on many different levels. Now, when it comes to the world of integration and API management, we have thousands of customers who've been using us in all different kinds of industries, everything from retail to manufacturing to oil and gas to technology to communications, insurance. We just have a lot of customers that not only use webMethods and other Software AG products for integration, but these companies are really building mission-critical applications on webMethods. So as we talk about the different kinds of projects that you can use Software AG for, just keep in mind that many other businesses have really bet their business on webMethods because it's been around for a long time, it's very stable, it's very secure, and you can bet your business on it. Now, today's topic is API management, and to just take a step back on what we mean by API management, we need to think about what's been happening in the industry for the last several years. I like to think of API management as a response to how we now live in an API-connected world. So it used to be that there were different ways of connecting applications, but really the industry standard has come down to primarily using APIs as the mechanism through which different applications talk to each other. And not just applications, everything from your mobile devices to web applications to cloud applications, even IoT where things are passing data back and forth via sensors from vehicles, from all kinds of different smart gadgets. We've even seen APIs coming into their own in terms of partner integration. So historically, where we had EDI documents, where we were sending documents back and forth for order management, different kinds of partner-based transactions, even this area has become dominated in many ways by APIs, displacing existing technologies. And that's not to forget other emerging trends such as big data and different kinds of data sources that people are using now across different industries. Now, not only are we interfacing with these different applications and data sources via APIs, but they are as well. So all of the different, basically the way all devices and applications are connected today are via APIs. Now what this does is it introduces several challenges in terms of how do we manage those APIs, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So based on that, what should you as an organization think about in terms of how to be successful given that the world has become much more of an API-connected world? Well, you can think of it in terms of creating new ways of doing business. And in fact, as we talk about monetization, that's really the kind of a main thread that you'll hear in terms of why people are adopting API programs. They're looking for new ways of doing business, or they're becoming easier to do business with. That's an example of where we just talked about where partners are doing integration with each other using APIs rather than potentially using, say, like an EDI program or different kinds of XML-based transactions. It also gives you a way to use your unique data and services to provide new kinds of value. So when we think of creating new ways of doing business, that might just be simply, providing what you're already doing as a new kind of service provided as an API. But a lot of existing businesses may not think of themselves in the same way that many of the startup companies or many of the larger internet-based companies think. So if you are primarily an internet-based company, you might think, well, of course, I'm going to provide my different services as an API to different consumers. But what if you're a bank that's been around for hundreds of years, or an insurance company, or what if you're a transportation company? What are your unique data and services that you can provide as an API above and beyond the traditional services you provide? And finally, as in all of our webMethods Wednesday sessions, we talk about digital transformation. It's not just enough to keep up with your competitors in terms of new types of applications and programs. You really need to consider different kinds of digital transformation initiatives to not only stay in competition with your competitors, but to leapfrog them and get ahead of them. So as always, we're going to talk about digital transformation as part of our webinar. Now, I'm going to take a step back a little bit. For those of you, I'm sure you know about APIs, but I always like to give a little bit of background information about just exactly how APIs provide value, because this will play into when we talk about the portal, when we talk about the gateway, what you're going to see. So as I just mentioned a moment ago, your company has data or has different kinds of services. Let's say you're a bank and you provide credit check information, for example, and you want to provide that credit check service to third parties. Well, you could take those services and make them available to third-party developers. So these are people outside of your organization. Now, this is commonly what we talk about when we talk about API management. We're talking about developers outside of your own organization. But we're gonna actually kind of burst that bubble a little bit. That's a little bit of a myth in terms of how APIs are used in organizations. But this is commonly what people think of, or at least what business people think of when they think about APIs. Now, once those APIs are available for third-party developers, those developers or partners are going to take those APIs and they're going to integrate them into some sort of an application or some sort of a device. So that might be a mobile app, that might be a web-based app, it might be a smart thing, it might be a car, it might be a sensor. So once they've created those applications, then ultimately what they're doing is they're bringing value back to your business in some fashion. Now, a lot of times we think of the simple case where that value that we're bringing back is directly dollars or euros or some sort of monetary value. But that is not always the case. Sometimes the value you're going to bring back to your business is broadening your community or building your developer base or building awareness or bringing people in to use some services so that they could then sign up for other services. Maybe it's a loss leader, for example. So there are different kinds of value. Now, today we're specifically talking about monetization, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about actually providing specific monetary value back to the company, but we'll jump to that in a moment. So here's how API management works, and these are all the different capabilities you're going to need. So think of different kinds of stakeholders. So you, as an organization, are going to provide your APIs. You're going to create an API program, and you're going to make those available to those third-party developers and those partners. And what are they going to do? They're going to, as we said before, create API interaction points. These are the mobile applications, the web applications, the IoT devices. They're all using those APIs. And then the way they're going to find out about what APIs you provide are via your developer portal. So we're going to focus on two different kinds of, or two different interfaces in API management. The API portal is really what's exposing what's available in your organization's backend systems, whether it's a catalog of APIs, whether it's data from databases or applications or some kind of logic, some sort of services that you've built on the backend. So the chain goes from the backend systems through your portal so that your APIs are available to developers and partners. Right? Now, let's switch gears and think of it from the user's perspective. Now, these are your actual end users. These are the people who are going to actually use the mobile device that your third-party developers built. Those API interaction points are the same as the developers built, but now we're looking at a runtime engagement model. So as transactions actually go into your back-end systems, those applications and data that you provide, they're going through a gateway. And that gateway provides all of the security, the policy enforcement, the different kinds of runtime aspects of exposing your APIs across the internet or even internally. So those are the different interaction points, and those provide an idea of what kind of capabilities you're going to need. So to provide a full API program, you're going to need everything from API discovery, documentation, and testing. These are all of the kinds of capabilities you would find within the developer's portal. You're also going to need usage analytics so that you understand as the developer of an API who's using your APIs, how they're using their APIs, where they're located geographically, which APIs are being used versus other ones. This really provides you as a developer a way of gauging how your product is selling, because your APIs are really, in fact, a product. Whether you're selling them directly for subscription revenue or whether you're making them available, at the end of the day, you're still providing those as a service to someone, so you need to think of them as a product. Now, one of the cool things that you can do with APIs is you can build up a community of people who follow and use those APIs and who can actually provide feedback. So one of the things that you really want to make sure you have in an API management program is the ability to collaborate between developers. So not just between you and your end users, but those developers and partners can talk to each other so they can determine how to use your APIs. Maybe they have questions and they're going to go to the community, or maybe they have suggestions. Hey, why don't we provide feature A or feature B? It would really make this API better. Now, for the runtime components, we talked about governance. How do we provide governance? How do we provide security? Even how do you provide API development? So these are more on the runtime aspect of building APIs. And then finally, the last feature we're going to talk about today is monetization. Now, I'll drive in a little bit more about what do we mean by monetization, because it might mean more than you think it means. So first off, when you create APIs, you don't usually create one API. You probably create multiple APIs. And you're going to provide those externally for those developers and partners. So you're going to create a package that contains multiple APIs for external consumption. And you're going to define service level agreements and support levels for those different packages. To give you an example, if you're providing APIs for, we'll use the example I used before, for a credit check service, you might have some of your partners that are your top tier partners, and they might need to use your API many, many times. They might call that API 1,000 times per second. They might call that, they might need guaranteed uptime on that, or guaranteed throughput on that API. Now, you might have lower-level partners who maybe only access that API once in a while. You don't want to charge those same customers the same rates. So you might provide a silver tier or a gold tier or a platinum tier that offers maybe even different customer support levels. So you could provide higher-level customer support or higher-level service-level agreements for your top-tier partners. All of these should be available externally so that developers can sign up for the plans right through your API developer portal. And Kevin's going to walk through some of this here in just a moment. Now, on the flip side, we actually have many conversations with some of our existing customers and some of our the companies that are looking to do API programs, and they're actually interested in what we call internal monetization, and some of our customers have actually called it reverse monetization. What we mean by that is internal organizations might provide APIs that are going to be used across different business units or different departments within an organization. And you still want to be able to track who's using those APIs. You still want to know which business units are signing up for those APIs. And the great thing about API management is that you can provide that kind of metering and tracking of usage, because the different organizations need to sign up for access tokens or different kinds of access to be able to call your APIs. Once you've done that, you can meter the usage between the different departments or different business units for the purposes of either just tracking that from an accounting perspective to know where your resources are going. But we've also seen many conversations about companies wanting to do chargebacks. So, you know, a centralized organization provides a service and different departments use that, and then they might have to do some sort of a chargeback to the centralized group who provides the service to help pay for it. Developers can request access and register usage via the API portal. So the API portal, even though we've talked about it as being sort of an external-facing front end to what's available, I always think of it as almost like as a catalog, or it's just your website, your external-facing website that says, hey, these are the services I provide, this is how they work, this is how you use them. But you can do that both externally and internally, and you can limit who can see the portal. And again, Kevin's going to walk through that in just a moment. In fact, it's just about time for me to hand over to Kevin so he can walk you through what it looks like from the portal's perspective and from the gateway's perspective about how you monetize APIs. So Kevin, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. So for the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm just going to walk you through very quickly what the solution looks like and give you a little bit more in-depth on how we would accomplish both API management as well as monetization of the APIs. So the first thing we're looking at right now is the GUI for the API gateway. This is the execution layer that David was talking about. Here's where you come, you create or import your APIs, you set up whatever security or mediation policies that you want to put on there, you set up what applications are going to be leveraging your APIs, and then at execution, you'll capture metrics around how those APIs are working, who is consuming them, and then also specifically from monetization perspective, being able to put throttling or metering around the usage of those APIs so that people, whether internally or externally, who are leveraging and using the APIs are falling within whatever API plans that you are working on them with. So the first step, you would come in, I can look through all the APIs that have currently been added into the gateway. I can come and I can actually create an API, and you'll see the ability to use many of the typical standards, whether they're REST resources using RAML or Swagger, or a SOAP resource using WSDL. I can import them from files, I can import them directly from a URL, or I can create them from scratch inside the gateway. Once I've created an API, I can come in and I can look at that API and see what is available for handling execution. You'll see here, this is your standard pet store Swagger API that I imported. It's got, get and post on pets and get and post on pets for by ID. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll see a little I. What that I means is that it's exposed to consumers. So one of the key things from an API perspective is you don't want to have to go in to an API that you have that has 20 different operations or 30 different resources and say, well, before I expose this out, I need to remove the resources or the operations that I don't want available. So I can come in, and when I'm in edit mode, I can edit this to say, while I have all 30 resources here, right now I'm only exposing out these 5 or 6. In the future, then I can change that and expose more. I can put different security around different operations and set everything up that way. So that's an example of what a REST resource. Now we'll go in and look at a SOAP resource. You'll see instead of the resources, I've got a list of the available operations. Once I've created the API, the next thing I want to do is figure out how I want to allow people to execute it, what kind of policies I want to put around it. So this is the way that we handle doing all of the runtime policies. For those of you that are familiar or may have seen a 9.12 version demonstration, this is a sneak peek at the version 10 that is releasing here. From here, you can see up top, this is your consumer of the API. Follows the blue line down to the provider, and then the green line back up as the response. At each different level or area, I can put different policies around that. So if I wanted to go and look at threat protection, here's where I can do a lot of the edge security pieces that we're talking about, you know, denial of service attacks, SQL injection filters, setting those up. This also can be done from a global perspective, so that at a global area, I can be doing this for any communication that's coming from the outside world. For internal use only APIs, I probably have to worry about the threat detection a little bit less, but still important. The key ones for being able to do and handle the concept of monetization really occur first at identify and access. So I'm coming over here and I'm actually looking as information comes through, and I'm attempting to determine based on the inbound call who the person is that's calling it. At this level, I could also say, no, you can't come in if you're anonymous. In this case, I'm actually allowing anonymous is true. So I'm not stopping people from getting in, but if you're calling in and I know who you are, I want to capture who you are so then I can do information down in the traffic monitoring area to say, how do I want to handle when these things are coming through? So in here, I'm logging the indications so that I can do dashboarding and an analysis of trends in the future, and I'm also doing a result cache. So if someone is coming in, I can monitor and say, hey, I'm not going to go and hit the back-end system every time if the same request is coming in, so I can cache results. On here, I'm caching for 15 minutes for a particular size. So now I've given you the ability to remove even the traffic to the back-end system where necessary. Once I've done that, I'm now going to say, okay, I want to add some applications that have access to this API. So I've got my CRM system, my ERP system, and 2 different billing systems, one that's version 1.0 and one that's my new 2.0 version that's coming out. So we can handle the ability to version both APIs as well as applications, so I can really understand what access is happening, who's getting into the different environments. And then finally, the last piece around that really is I want to be able to see analytics on how things are occurring. Am I getting errors? Is my response time trending up or down? Am I getting lots of success or failures? And I may even want to capture and look at the information exactly what's being passed. So I can come in, I can find out the information about individual transactions. If an error occurs, I can drill in and see what's going on to really be able to figure out, okay, how is that occurring? So that's just a little idea basically of what's going on in the gateway. So now how do we handle actually creating and monetizing different APIs? So the first concept that we have is the idea of an API package. So I want to provide a set of APIs or an individual API out to my consumers, whether they're internal or external, to be able to do customer lookup. And inside of this customer lookup, I want to have a set of plans that people are allowed to come and use. So in this case, silver, bronze, platinum. If I come in, you'll see I can set up things around how much the price is, what are the terms, what is my throttling policy for this particular plan. So in this case, at a low level, you want to be able to get your customers to start using it. So you probably provide, as most of the customers I've worked with, are providing a try it for free, but with a pretty harsh restriction on the amount of usage you're allowed to have. So in this case, you're only allowed to make one request every 5 minutes if you're signed up for the bronze plan. This will allow them to be able to come in, try it out, but not really put it in any kind of automated concept, so they're not going to be able to bake it in to be able to make calls consistently. It's not going to slow down your customers that are using it much more often. And then once I've set up all of those different packages and plans, I can come in, assign them, assign APIs, and then I can publish this out to the API portal simply by pushing the publish button. Once that is published out, that is now available inside of our portal for people to come and actually request access to, get API keys, etc. One of the things that David mentioned is that you have the ability to do both kind of a true external charge for monetization, but also the concept of doing internal monetization or chargeback. One of the big topics that I've had with a lot of the customers I've been talking to recently is they want to be able to understand the usage of certain APIs so that when they need to create new versions or when they need to do upgrades, that they can go back to their internal business units and say, hey, we need to upgrade this. You guys use 80% of the capacity or 50% of the capacity, so you should pick up 80 or 50% of the tag. And the way we can look and determine what is really happening in those cases is to come in and look at the analytics, and I can drill this down by particular application, by consumer. I can see which applications are using all of the APIs or an individual API more and more than anyone else. I can also come and look and see any type of trends that happen to be going on. You can see here, obviously, demo environment. So I've got a scheduled event that's kicking off some errors for me and sending performance data. And then I've got this that I ran just earlier before. What this allows me to do is come in and see, okay, how is the usage of this API really occurring? I may think that I'm getting a lot of usage only between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. But I may find out there's a huge spike at midnight because one of my consumers, whether, once again, internal or external, one of my consumers is running a batch job and they're hitting the API between midnight and 1,000 times. And I want to be able to figure out how I can scale and handle whatever peak loads are coming through. Really helps me to be able to do capacity planning and understand all of the metrics that are coming through from that perspective. Applications can be set up. They can have API keys. You can use simple usernames for either HTTP basic auth, WS security, any of the different security mechanisms that you want to handle, Kerberos SAML tokens, etc. And then the final thing, once I've created my package, I've created my APIs, I understand exactly how I want to handle the execution layer. I then would publish the API up to the portal as well. And then once it's in the portal, it is now available in what I like to refer to as the advertising part of the API solution. So this is where you want your customers and your employees to be able to come and quickly find whatever APIs that are available for them to use. So I come in and go to the API gallery. I can quickly see the different APIs that are available. I can do searching and browsing, find my APIs. I can do browsing by different categories to find them. The key really is to make it so that people have the ability to come in and find what they're looking for as simply and easily and give them as much information as possible. So if I come in and view the details, I can come and look at my API resources. So it's going to be very similar to all of the information that we saw inside of the gateway, except the gateway, that's really only where your administrators and your internal developers are going to go to create the execution layer. This is where, in the portal, where everyone else is going to come. This is where they're going to come to try and find what they're looking for, find some information. So beyond just APIs and being able to come in, try it out, post information into the collaboration forum so that you can get feedback from the developers, make feature requests, et cetera, I also have the ability to look for API packages. So here's the customer lookup package that I created and published out. I can come in and see, okay, we've got different information. Bronze is free, platinum 250 a month, silver 50 a month, whatever it happens to be. And then I simply come in and say, okay, now that I'm here, I want to subscribe to one of the plans. I put in the name of the application I want to subscribe to. And I request the token. I have it set up to automatically approve. So as an administrator or as any user, I can come in and I can look at all of the different things that I have access to. I can go and look at my APIs. I can go and see who's providing APIs. And I can also go and look and see what access tokens I have available. So see, I now have an access token that I can use as an API key to access that app. One of the key pieces of this is if I'm actually using more than one API inside of an application, I now have a single access token that I can use across all of those APIs. So I now can bundle multiple APIs from separate back-end systems. So some of them may be coming from your ERP system, some may be coming from your CRM system, and I can do authentication and authorization for that API at the gateway level. So I can move that up so that I don't have to give my customers, my consumers, multiple logins. Oh, for this API, you need to use this, and for that API, you need to use that. Because I can bring those APIs into a single virtual application, I now can give them one single token to log into all of those APIs and get access. This really allows you to much more easily be able to manage the different access and the different information. And if you happen to pull off a CRM system, maybe you go from something on-site to something in the cloud, they'll still be able to have that same level of access. Just inside of the execution layer, you go in, you change the routing, and you point it from the internal application to Salesforce or something in the cloud, and then they would automatically have access. Final thing really around the API portal is kind of the look and feel. So I may want to come in and say, hey, I want this, especially if I'm exposing this externally to my customers or my partners, I want this to look exactly like my application. So it's very simple to come in and edit information. I can come in and say, okay, I want to go and I want to edit the gallery page. I can add pages. I can remove pages. I can do simple changes where if there's GIFs or pictures that are on inside any of the HTML, I can come in, change those. But I also have access directly to the HTML. And we've got multiple customers who have the product running in production today, where if you go out and look, you'll only know that it's Software AG if you knew that they're a Software AG customer. So you can customize this and personalize it to look like it belongs directly on your .com page. And with that, I think I will pass it back to David, and we will follow up with some questions at the end.
Thanks, Kevin. Hold on just a second. All right. So thanks for walking us through that, Kevin. Before we get to the Q&A, I just wanted to wrap this up a little bit with some additional information. One is, so after seeing all this, why would you want to select Software AG and our digital business platform for API management? Well, we didn't go through all of the details about how everything is set up and configured and everything. This was really a focus just on monetization, how plans and packages work. But overall, the Software AG API management platform provides a very integrated yet loosely coupled platform. So everything you saw from the portal to the gateway, plus what's running on the back end, which we didn't talk about, but that's our integration platform, which allows us to actually build out APIs. All of these components can be sold separately, but they work together because they're all built on the same technology. So when we look at our gateway versus our integration platform, it becomes very simple for us to expose APIs that we build within the integration platform through the gateway. And since they're all built in-house by us, configuring them and setting them up it becomes very simple. In fact, the whole security setup is pretty simple because of the way we've been doing gateway security for the last 15 years. We use a type of reverse invoke technology, which is something different than most vendors provide. We have it set up so that we can do configuration between the gateway and the on-premises environment without having to open up any holes or open up any ports in the firewall, which just provides an extra layer of security. We provide a very comprehensive solution. We didn't cover all of the capabilities today. Like I said, we focused mostly on how you can use the products for defining and signing up for plans and packages. But we provide everything from the portal to the gateway to full-blown lifecycle management. Everything from defining your APIs over multiple versions, multiple releases. How do you manage the full life cycle of an API where you have to retire a version and you bring in a new version? How do you define those different policies? All of those capabilities are very important to have a successful API program. Software AG provides a comprehensive solution for all of that API governance. And finally, as I talked about before, we have a unified API and integration platform. We essentially treat them as two parts of the same product because APIs are becoming increasingly important, not just for external usage, but many companies are using APIs to do application integration, which I think has a lot to do with the way different companies are staffing projects and how they're planning for rolling out different kinds of internal integration. So all of those reasons are reasons why you would consider Software AG and our digital business platform for solving your API management problems. Now I'm going to hand it over to Charlie to wrap up. And if you have any questions, now would be the time. Charlie?
Exactly. Thanks, David. And before we go to those questions, we'd like to take the opportunity to offer today's attendees a 20-minute consultation with today's experts. So if you'd like to continue this dialogue, please contact us now. Use the chat box, and we'll set something up at your convenience. Or feel free to use David or Kevin's corporate email as listed on earlier slides, but we'll be seeing them on the, actually we'll see those corporate emails on the slide coming up right now. And with that slide in play, let us go to Q&A. And so here's our first question. How does webMethods handle billing and invoicing?
Okay, I'll take that one. So that's a good question because what we talked about was monetization, plans, and packages, but what we didn't talk about is how do you actually implement that within your own organization's billing system? So the API management gateway does the metering, it does tracking, and we build, we can create reports that directly feed into a billing system, but we don't provide a billing system out of the box because every organization tends to use their own system, their own pricing, their own packaging, their own invoicing system. So rather than try to become a billing system, we actually make it possible to integrate with other billing systems. So, for example, we have one of our customers in Italy, they use an open source billing system called JBilling. So we can integrate with that. We can integrate with any of the other kind of public or open source billing systems that are out there.
Is Software AG's API management product available as a cloud service?
Yes and no. So the two different components we talked about today with the portal and the gateway, currently the API portal is available as a cloud service, and you can learn about that by going to webmethodscloud.com, and you can look up API Cloud. The portal is hosted by us. We run it, we install it, but you have full access as an organization to configure the look and feel and to connect it to your gateway. As of today, the gateway is available as an installable software piece, and you can install that either on premises or you can install it in cloud environments such as Amazon AWS or Google Cloud Compute Engine or any of the different public cloud environments. But we don't offer that one as a subscription cloud service today. However, we will be offering that in October later this year.
How relevant is webMethods ESB in the new API world in contrast to other competitive API management products?
Here, I'll take that one too. So that's a good question, and we actually get that question a lot from different customers we talk to and different potential customers that we talk to. So what we've seen is a couple of interesting trends over the last 2 years, I'd say. Although API management vendors have been around for a while now, there are several of the big vendors such as Apogee, Mashery, CA. All of these different vendors have been around for a while. But what we've noticed is that all of the pure play API management vendors are being acquired, and they're all being acquired typically by platform vendors, not that different from Software AG. And the reason is because our opinion on it is that API management as a pure market isn't really a standalone offering. So what I mean by that is typically if you're doing API management, you're doing it in conjunction with something else. So you want to be able to build your APIs and manage them at the same time. So like I said earlier in the webinar, webMethods provides both integration and API management. And by integration, we don't just mean the ability to integrate with the backend system or to do B2B partner integration like that. webMethods provides a full-featured development environment for building out services. And all of those services, whether they're built in SOAP, whether they're built as a REST service, all of those services become something that you can either expose internally to your development team, or you could expose those externally. Now, the way to manage that is through API management. So you provide internally, like what Kevin showed in the demo, the ability to provide an internal list of different APIs that are available, as well as an external list for potential third-party users. So first off, we don't view them as separate markets anymore. And interestingly, I started talking about this, we're seeing a different kind of user. So the integration world, there's really, Gartner describes it as a pervasive integration, where we have 3 different kinds of users that are now emerging. So historically, integration was pretty much dominated by specialists. You had integration architects, you had integration specialists. Many companies created integration competency center. It might have been built around a SOA initiative, service-oriented architecture initiative. And it required specialized knowledge, not just about your applications, but you had to really understand what the architecture of an integration environment was all about. What we've seen is that those specialists are still there, they really cater to sort of mission-critical integration projects. So you have, if you're, for example, integrating into your SAP system or your Oracle Enterprise e-business suite type applications or PeopleSoft or any of those, you really don't want to expose that to just anybody. You want to have somebody who knows what they're doing be the developer that does the integrations with those systems, because those are your systems of record. What we've seen, though, is that a lot of projects maybe are not mission critical. They might be, providing updates from people who showed interest in an event you did, and you want to populate that into your marketing automation system, right? In that case, you don't necessarily need the same people who are integrating your SAP environment to integrate that. And so what we see is a lot of companies, rather than have specialists do it, they'll have what we call ad hoc developers. These are people who are knowledgeable. They might be Java developers. They might be, developers of just kind of general purpose applications, but they've been asked to do an integration project. In that case, just having the API available for these becomes a means for handing off different kinds of integration projects as if they were an application project, application development project, so anybody can do it. And then the third category of users are citizen integrators, who are people who might want to build these types of integrations, but they'll do so. They may not be programmers at all. There might be a business analyst. There's somebody who's trying to solve this problem. So you use a different kind of set of tools for those. Now, this is a long way of saying that we see integration is still very relevant today, because those kinds of mission-critical projects don't go away. But we also see that API management as a standalone component is not really, it doesn't provide enough value on its own that companies who only provide that are able to stay in business. And I think that's why Apogee was acquired by Google, and I think that's why 3Scale was acquired by Red Hat, because these other vendors see value in API management as an extension of what they do, but they don't see it as a full-blown market in and of itself. So it's kind of a long answer, but hopefully that answers why ESBs are still relevant today versus just, say, acquiring an API management solution from a pure play vendor who actually today no longer exists. So.
Thank you, David. And we still have time, so as far as questions or comments are concerned, so again, I would direct you to the bottom right-hand side of your screen for the WebEx Q&A box. And here's another question. The analytics piece enforce SLAs, and if so, how are they defined?
Kevin, I'll let you take that one.
Sounds good. So, yes, SLAs can be defined and enforced, and there are, I would say, multiple ways to kind of handle that, and I hate the answer, it depends, but it depends. The typical way that I've seen the customers are using it is more to alert on SLA violations. So I've got an important customer. They're using my APIs to access customer information or to pay bills or to do something. And I've worked with them and said, hey, we promise you that you will have a response time of sub 1 second because you're using our APIs and your website and our information to your customer, and you don't want your customer sitting there and waiting for 2-3 seconds to get a response. So in that case, I would set up an SLA that says anytime I see response time either trending in the wrong direction or breaking a hard threshold SLA, I want to send an alert, typically an SNMP trap, an email, a page, a text message to my operations folks, notifying them that something is going wrong and that some service level agreement that I have with a partner or even internally has been violated, and then they would be able to come in and troubleshoot and get to kind of the root cause. And a lot of this really ties into what David was just talking about kind of the full picture, and where I see our solution as being better from a competitive perspective is the fact that we do everything from soup to nuts. So we've got the gateway for execution. We've got the portal for your advertising or your promotion of your APIs and collaboration. We've got the center site that is our API catalog, where you can understand how those things are getting developed, monitor them, and administer them as they go through their development lifecycle. And then also there's a execution monitoring concept for not only APIs but all of your internal services that really ties this whole picture together. So not only can I get the SLA that something is occurring at the gateway, but then I can do a deep dive root cause across all of my internal systems to find out where the cause of that SLA violation is occurring. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's do one more, and guys, please feel free to add any other commentary in addition. So the question is, do you have to create APIs in webMethods, or can you use your API management product to expose third-party APIs?
I'll take a step first, David, and if you want to add.
You go for it.
Yeah, so from both the perspective of the gateway and the portal, there is no necessity to use webMethods for any other part of the solution. So the short answer is, I think the way the question was worded, the short answer is yes. You can take any API that you've created, typically RAML, Swagger, WSDL, and OData, and you can take those, you can bring them into both the gateway and the portal, expose them out without ever leveraging anything from our integration server. And just to add my extra 2 cents, what you got to see today was a very small portion of our SOA solution, so please feel free to reach out to me directly at the email address that I believe is still on the screen. I would be happy to kind of talk to you and run you through everything and all of the capabilities of our API solution. Go ahead, David.
Great. And I think you answered the question in full, so with that, I'll hand it back to Charlie.
And I will say to both of you, thank you very much for an excellent presentation. In fact, we've gotten as many favorable comments as we've gotten questions, so great job. Please join us next week. We're going to be doing another webMethods live demo, this time about how to do continuous monitoring in a DevOps environment. Until then, we thank Kevin Miller and David Ovros, and have a great rest of the day.